There's just so much.
You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on.
Hey, True Crime Conversations fans, it's your host Gemma here. Over summer, we're taking a little break ourselves, but don't worry, we're not going to leave you without some crime to delve into. In fact, we're going to be dropping 2 episodes a week into your feed from our sister podcast, Extraordinary Stories. Up first is a 3-part deep dive into Belle Gibson, the convicted scammer who not only faked cancer and duped Australians out of their hard-earned cash, but conned sick and vulnerable people into trying to cure their cancers with healthy eating and pseudoscience. We hope you enjoy, and we'll be back in the new year with all new True Crime Conversations.
On a warm summer's day in 2014, some of Australia's most impressive women gathered at Woolloomooloo's famous finger wharves on Sydney Harbour. They were there to celebrate Cosmopolitan magazine's Fun Fearless Female Awards. Everything was sparkling. The water, the sky, and the cocktails. Laughter echoed out across the wharf as Samantha Armitage sipped and nibbled alongside Jodie and Asta, Jacinta Franklin, Lisa Wilkinson, Dami Im, Hollywood it girl Tara Reid, and Belle Gibson. If now that name brings with it the weighty infamy of a notorious scam, then it did not. Then Belle was there to be celebrated.
So it's really bizarre to be winning an official award for social media. I started posting about just my day, and I thought, who's going to find this interesting, but was encouraged by friends and family because they knew that what I was sharing someone else would be interested in.
She was what we now know as an influencer, a young entrepreneurial mother whose cookbook and iPhone app were a huge success. And she didn't look even a little bit out of place alongside Sydney's social A-list, dressed in white, apparently glowing with health, despite the fact that a very large piece of her story and appeal was that she was far from healthy. Belle was going through a very public battle with a malignant brain tumour. Just the latest, she claimed, in a series of life-threatening illnesses she'd been diagnosed with since she was a teenager. It was why she was there, as Cosmo's editor at the time, Bronwyn McCann, says.
You wanted to hug her. That's the best description. She had this very sweet nature, very personable, shiny eyes, where you just thought, gosh, you're going through so much, and look at you, you clever girl, that you've done all of this stuff with the app and Apple and everything. And even looking back now, not at all would you ever go, there was something dodgy about her. Not at all. She was the sweetest.
But there was something dodgy about Belle Gibson. From Mamamia, welcome to Extraordinary Stories, the podcast that takes you inside the stories you thought you knew with the women who really do. I'm your host, Emma Gillespie. On this season of Extraordinary Stories, we're looking at the young woman who fooled not only her hundreds of thousands of followers, but the most prestigious book publishers in Australia, the tech giants of Silicon Valley, and even her family and friends into believing she was something she was not. Sick. And making lots of money as she did it. You're going to hear from the people she tricked.
I'm getting sicker. I'm having chemo. I'm following all of what the doctors say to do, and I'm nearly dying, and she's living her best life.
The people who sat face to face with her.
When I met Belle Gibson, she was more concerned about the impact on herself. She knew to talk in a sympathetic way about the people that she'd met, but I think that no, she was most upset about the effect on her.
And the people who had never seen anything like it, ever.
I haven't seen an example of online misleading and deceptive conduct of this sort of scale in this country or, frankly, anywhere.
She doesn't have cancer. She doesn't have brain tumours. Everything is a lie.
This is Extraordinary Stories, Belle Gibson. Wynnum is an unremarkable suburb of Brisbane. Wide streets, weatherboard Queenslanders with iconic verandas, and a view overlooking Moreton Bay. There's a jetty, mangroves, a popular wading pool frequented by local kids in the summer holidays. It's also where Annabelle Natalie Gibson grew up. Born in October 1991, her story starts there, in Queensland. It's not necessarily the kind of place you might imagine as home to a master criminal, but then again, Belle Gibson's origin story isn't particularly easy to piece together. But there are a few things we can be sure of. One of them is that Belle Gibson grew up, at least for a time, in Wynnum with her mum, Natalie, and her brother, Nick. Despite its suburban charm nowadays, back in the early 2000s, there was a spike in local crime around Wynnum. For example, police had enforced a ban on hoodies to deal with the increasing amount of armed robberies in the area, and things at Belle's place weren't always easy. According to Belle, she had a nomadic childhood, having never met her father and constantly moving between cities before settling in Brisbane. She told the Australian Woman's Weekly in 2015,
When I started school, my mum went, "My daughter's all grown up now." All of a sudden, I was walking to school on my own, making school lunches, and cleaning the house every day. It was my responsibility to do grocery shopping, do the washing, arrange medical appointments, and pick up my brother. I didn't have toys.
Claire Weaver, the journalist who interviewed her for that story, says Belle claimed she was also burdened with responsibilities beyond her years as a young girl. Things like caring for her autistic brother.
There might be truth in there, as with some other things Belle has said. It might be the case that some of it's true and some of it's been exaggerated or elaborated. Maybe she just has had this really terrible, bleak childhood. But I can't help but think, given the pattern of what she said more recently, that maybe some of it she's built upon and exaggerated.
Nick Toscano and Beau Donnelly are Melbourne-based journalists who wrote a book about Belle Gibson. It's called The Woman Who Fooled the World. Beau told Channel 10 in 2017 that Belle may have had a difficult childhood.
Belle certainly has come from a troubled upbringing. She's come from a lot of instability. Indeed, it doesn't excuse what she's done, but we were left sort of feeling somewhat sympathetic towards her. Of course, it doesn't excuse the sort of wrongdoing and the deceit and the way she led actual cancer sufferers astray. But look, someone who was mentally healthy, completely mentally healthy, I don't think would have been able to perpetuate such a life for so long. So I think there is an element of sympathy.
After apparent instability at home in her early years, Belle seemed to have found her feet by high school. And she thrived. Her teachers described her as a high achiever, an exemplary pupil, but she also excelled outside of the classroom. Belle enrolled in acting classes at the Mercury Youth Theatre. According to her drama teacher, she was quite good, and she was renowned as a great storyteller among her peers. Kelsey Gamble knew Belle through acting classes and remembers her well, partly for the way the other students reacted to what they saw as her fantasist side. Kelsey told Nick Toscano and Beau Donnelly,
"She was extremely well known for what basically amounts to compulsive lying. She was honestly a laughingstock half the time. People made fun of her."
Belle told classmates she was a test tube baby, or part of the witness protection program. But there was one theme that began to emerge in her tall tales, and it stuck around. Stories of medical dramas and incredible recovery. Belle told many people that she'd suffered major heart problems and had even undergone a series of life-saving operations. Belle's former boyfriend, Jacob, he heard a lot of Belle's stories.
She couldn't go 5 minutes without making up a story. Back then it was about her heart. And it all just went over the top of my head because it was just so frequent. That's how she works. She just opens her mouth and starts saying stories.
By the time she was 18, Belle had left school and moved to Perth. That's where she found her first online audience. It's also where, according to The Weekly, Belle started working in a call centre at a private health insurance firm. She was speaking to sick people day in, day out, and hearing all about their illnesses. She told Claire Weaver at the time,
I was hearing some horrible things about what people were going through.
Belle's first blogging experience came through a chat room about rock band The Flaming Lips. She told that community she was posting from a Perth hospital ward where she was waiting for the first of 3 or more operations to remove fluid from around her heart. Belle described in vivid detail a series of operations, specialist appointments, even visits to the hospital chapel. She said she was undergoing tests for a heart tumour and preparing for chemotherapy. Belle also wrote that she went into a coma after dying on the operating table.
The doctor comes in and tells me the draining failed, and I went into cardiac arrest and died for just under 3 minutes. I went straight into a coma situation for 6 hours and just woke up crying for my iPhone. They're amazed I'm sitting up already and claim a miracle. Anyway, the procedure failed and I died. Pretty gnarly.
After her alleged major heart surgery, there was another turning point in Belle's story. She got the cervical cancer vaccine, a HPV immunisation that began to roll out across Australia in 2007. Belle wrote that after getting her second vaccination, she suffered a stroke. It was a strange claim, as Dr. Brad Mackay, Sydney GP and author of Fake Medicine, explains.
Back in 2009, Belle Gibson said that she received a terrible diagnosis from her doctor. She said that she was diagnosed with brain cancer, it was terminal, and she only had a few months to live. But this is a really odd part of the story where Belle Gibson was saying that she had been immunised against cervical cancer and then subsequently had had a stroke and then that had led to brain cancer. So it's sort of like blaming a vaccine on getting cancer. But what we know about using the HPV, the human papillomavirus vaccine, is that it's not been linked at all with cancer. It's not linked with stroke whatsoever. So blaming it is a little bit far-fetched. We do know that it's great at stopping people from getting cervical cancer and also genital warts, but also with brain cancer, if that's growing, that could potentially break a blood vessel and then cause a stroke to happen. But a stroke itself, like a bleed within the brain, that's not going to trigger a cancer to then occur. It's the wrong way round.
It's at this point that 18-year-old Belle says she was introduced to a man called Dr. Mark Johns by a group of anti-vaccination campaigners. Belle said Dr. Johns was a neurologist and immunologist from Melbourne's Peter MacCallum Cancer Centre. This introduction would set about a chain of events that would eventually bring Belle to Melbourne, where she settled permanently and where everything was about to change. You'll hear more about Dr. Johns later in Belle's story. It was 2010. Belle was living in Melbourne with her boyfriend Nathan Corbett. She'd been diagnosed with brain cancer and she was about to give birth to her son, Oliver. It was around this time that Belle claimed she underwent conventional treatment for this malignant brain tumour. Dr. Brad Mackay says there are a few options that would be presented to patients with Belle's diagnosis.
The treatment options that Belle would have been offered would have been things like chemotherapy, radiotherapy, so poisons into the vein to try to kill the cancer, radiotherapy, so putting x-rays towards where the cancers were to try to shrink them down. Sometimes we would engage with surgery, so many people with brain cancer will have a scar on the side of their head where surgeons have gone in to remove it.
But Belle would eventually describe how she abandoned these treatments in favour of holistic remedies and alternative medicine.
So Belle said that she went in for treatment at the hospital, that she went to the oncology ward and that she received treatment. She was saying that it was just too much for her, that it was she was feeling overwhelmed. She didn't really know what to do. She wasn't wanting to persevere with the typical medical model with westernized treatment. And so she decided at that time that she wanted to take some alternative remedies. She wanted to do her own research and figure out what would work for her and her body at that time.
This became a crucial turning point in Belle's blogs. Today, wellness influencers are a mainstream staple of every social media platform. But in 2009, they were just beginning to flourish. Many of us hadn't even heard of the word wellness. Known as the original wellness warrior, Jessica Ainscoe, another young woman from Queensland, was documenting her alternative cancer treatment online to an ever-growing audience. Jessica was a writer and blogger, an online editor for Dolly magazine, living what she deemed her hectic dream life in Sydney when she was diagnosed with an extremely rare and aggressive sarcoma. She was only 23. The cancer was in her left arm and hand, and after being told that her best treatment option was amputation, Jess had decided to try to heal herself without traditional cancer treatment and to document the process. Jessica was a devotee of Gerson therapy, a food-based protocol that claims to cure all kinds of serious ailments, most famously cancer, with an all-vegetarian diet and a strict regime of fruit and veggie juices and coffee enemas. Here's Jess describing her daily routine.
So basically, a day in the life of a Gerson person is I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I do my first coffee enema. So it's onto the bathroom floor, then I do my enema, and then I go upstairs and I meditate for about half an hour to 45 minutes. And then breakfast is at 7:15 when we have our first juice, which is orange juice. So breakfast at 7, and then the next juice is at 8, and the real veggie juices start from then. And it's one veggie juice every hour on the hour, right up until 6 o'clock in the evening. So yeah, basically throughout the day. And we also we do 5 coffee enemas throughout the day, so spread between a few hours between each one. We have 3 full meals each day, breakfast, lunch and dinner, all at the same time every day. And basically, yeah, the therapy goes like that, run like a bit of a military regime actually, on the hour, every hour, right up until we go to bed at 10 o'clock.
Dr. Brad says during her treatment, Jess Ainscoe built up an online profile promoting her belief that food was medicine.
Gerson therapy has been a therapy that's been around for many, many years, even from like the 60s and 70s. It's a treatment that involves doing lots and lots of juices, so fresh vegetables and fruit, putting them into a big juicer, and even it's quite onerous because you have to have the juice on the hour, every day for a long time. It also involves using enemas that usually either contain coffee or castor oil, and again, you need to be doing these enemas a couple of times a day at the least, with the whole principle that you're trying to rid your body of toxins, getting rid of toxins that could be sitting in your lower intestine and evacuating them. So, it hasn't been proven to work, and certainly there are practitioners around the world that still do it, but certainly it's not recommended in Australia.
Australia's wellness army was swelling, and just like Jess, Belle was going to be a part of it.
Belle Gibson is part of a new breed of entrepreneur. She is an ecopreneur.
You taste like mango.
Belle launched the Whole Pantry app last year.
Belle Gibson was a single mother living in Melbourne when she was told she only had 4 months to live. She said she tried chemotherapy, then radiation. She said she then started exploring alternative therapies, including Gerson, just like Jess. There's no scientific evidence that Gerson therapy cures cancer. But Belle was alive and thriving. Whatever she was doing, it seemed to work. So in 2013, Belle Gibson decided, just like Jess, to share her story with the world on Instagram, speaking candidly about her cancer and the wellness journey she believed was healing it. Documenting the highs and lows of her day-to-day experiences, it was her blog and social media platforms that would eventually land her a groundbreaking app and a best-selling book. Just like Jess Ainscoe had publicly documented, Belle claimed she was curing herself through food and lifestyle, not medicine. Not only did her quickly growing follower base believe Belle, they gave her the attention she craved. Outpourings of sympathy and concern, and perhaps most importantly, fellow cancer sufferers looked to her for hope. To them, this brave young woman was a beacon. If she was doing so well, surely they could too. In 2014, Kylie Willie was in a hospital bed feeling defeated and hopeless when she started following Belle Gibson on social media. Kylie, accustomed to an active lifestyle as a personal trainer, had recently gained 30 kilos. Her long brown hair had fallen out. Kylie had been diagnosed with grade 3B T-cell lymphoblastic lymphoma in her early 40s. She had not one, but several tumours from her pelvis all the way up to her neck.
I was completely shocked because I didn't smoke. You know, yeah, I'd like a glass of wine, but it was nothing excessive, lived a healthy life, no history of lymphoma in my family, just a complete and utter mind-blowing shock.
In a race to stop the cancer spreading to her brain, Kylie had begun aggressive chemotherapy. It caused her physical pain in a way she had never experienced before. Her body ached. She felt constantly nauseous.
My girlfriend came to visit me at the Alfred, and she was chatting about Belle and talking about how she, you know, has been going through treatment for cancer, but she's curing herself with eating really healthy, clean diet, and, you know, she wasn't going through the chemo or anything like that, and she was getting better. Yeah, so I sort of was thinking, here I am in the hospital, following the protocols, having chemotherapy, getting sicker. There's Belle Gibson writing books, signing deals with Apple. She's got brain cancer, which is so much worse than mine. She's having this clean diet. I was obviously eating the food that was provided by the Alfred, which isn't great. You know, it's hospital food. And I'm getting sicker. I'm having chemo. I'm following all of what the doctors say to do. And I'm nearly dying. And she's living her best life.
By 2013, Belle had well and truly found her stride and her voice. Within a year of announcing on social media that she'd been healing her brain cancer with foods and alternative therapies, her ideas were turned into an app. It was called The Whole Pantry, and it was full of the kind of food that Belle was eating. It would go on to win awards, be championed by Apple, be described as groundbreaking, and garner Belle Gibson international acclaim and a very lucrative book deal.
Yeah, I had the book, I had the app, I donated money to her, I went on all the Belle Gibson rides.
So what was it all about? What was The Whole Pantry?
A recipe collection full of whole foods and vegetarian recipes, which is the way that we encourage people to get back to the fundamentals of eating more fruits and vegetables.
The Whole Pantry app was celebrated as a sleek database full of thoughtful recipes, accompanied by lifestyle tips and tricks, wrapped up in a beautifully designed interface, with the iconic logo of 2 white leaves on a teal background. One of the world's richest, most recognisable, most influential companies loved it. Apple saw something in Belle, and she quickly found her place in an elite inner circle of app developers who'd won over the trust and loyalty of the global tech juggernaut. When they realised what a hit Belle's app was on iPhones, Apple made a bold decision to incorporate The Whole Pantry as a preloaded application on a brand new product. One that was set to revolutionise the wearable tech space for good.
Apple Watch is the most personal device we've ever created. We set out to make the best watch in the world. We love to make great products that really enrich people's lives. We love to integrate hardware, software, and services seamlessly. We love to make technology more personal and allow our users to do things that they could never have imagined.
This was a big deal. To have an Aussie app in the position The Whole Pantry had found itself in, and for that app to be in the wellness space, it just hadn't been done before. Here's what Belle had to say about what it was like to be on the ground at Apple HQ in Cupertino for that very announcement.
You know, it took 7 months worth of development, and I put everything that I knew along my journey with cancer, nutrition and wellness, and put it on the most accessible device possible, the iPhone. And it's just onwards and upwards from there. With the Apple Watch, it's even more accessible, and it's an even more personal experience and more personal journey to living the whole life and adopting the support and the resources that we put there for you. My developer and I had come over here 4 weeks ago now, and we've been working every day on our Apple Watch app, and it's been hard. It's been hard because of the jet lag. It's been hard being a startup and dropped in amongst the Twitters and the BMWs of the world, but we're ecstatic with what we've come out with.
The world was at her feet, and a huge publishing house took note. Belle signed a deal with Penguin Random House to turn the best-selling app into a book, filled with recipes and detailing Belle's moving story.
She was appeared to be the complete package. She, the big glowing smile and the beautiful hair and the perfect skin, and, she seemed patient and in control, and also backed by all of these people that thought that she was doing the right thing as well. She had signed a deal with Penguin Books. She had a contract with Apple. Of course she was legit, because otherwise these companies wouldn't be backing her. They wouldn't be a part of her story as well.
This was the peak of Belle's success. An app, a book, awards, followers, fame. All of that brought her to the Woolloomooloo Wharves that 2014 day for Cosmo's Fun Fearless Awards, where Belle took out the social media category.
Me trying to take more credit for this. That's not the fearlessness in me. But my partner has been saying to me for a year now, is it really strange? Nearly every morning for a long time he'd say, is it strange? Like you're waking up to an Etihad stadium full of people that are watching your every move or are waiting on some form of inspiration or advice or something to cook for their dinner.
When her team suggested Belle Gibson as a nominee, Bronwyn McCann thought it was a no-brainer.
So in that social media category, it was a varied list of people in fitness and in fashion and beauty and health and whatever else. And they pitched this girl named Belle Gibson. Hadn't heard of her at that point. So they had done their, due diligence going, and she's got, over 200,000 followers, and it's an amazing story because she's got all of these cancers and brain tumours, and she's done this app called The Whole Pantry, and Apple are going to put it on their next release of iPhone or iWatch or something. And I was like, wow, that's phenomenal. Like, what a story that this woman who's going through so much, a mother of one, and young, super young, and going through all this medical stuff, even has the time or energy or anything to create this incredible app that is being picked up by Apple. Like, this is unbelievable. So we were like, yeah, great. She sounds perfect to put in the category under, health, well-being. And that was that.
But that was not that. An email pinged into journalists' inboxes around the country at the exact same time. And it said,
"It has come to my attention that you have published a story about a girl I have known for my whole life. Her name is Belle Gibson, creator of the Whole Pantry app and book, and a so-called terminal cancer patient. Unfortunately, there are a few things you might need to know before you consider publishing more about this woman."
What that email went on to say would change everything. Next time on Extraordinary Stories.
I can't remember the time frame between the awards and when the next thing happened, but maybe it was a couple of months. And the next thing, one of the girls in the office came in and said, "Oh my God, I've just received this email." Anonymous, but basically from somebody who is saying that they went to school with Belle and that everything she's saying is a lie. Her age is a lie. She doesn't have cancer. She doesn't have brain tumours. Everything is a lie. And it had been sent to Cosmo and Clio and like all the magazines. So everyone had got it. And I imagine it had also been sent to various journalists at newspapers because everyone had got the same email from this anonymous source. So we're like, God, a monthly magazine is not going to be the magazine that breaks a big story like this because you've already got digital sites and news sites and everything that have already received this email.
There was one newsroom with the time, resources and interest to pursue this tip-off. And not even they could predict how Belle's empire of deception was about to unravel.
I think there is a bit of a pattern in people who want to lie to you, that they tell you a partial truth and then it just dovetails from there.
Thank you for listening to this episode. This episode of Extraordinary Stories was written and produced by me, Emma Gillespie, and Holly Wainwright. Audio production is by Eliza Ratliff and Madeline Joannou. The executive producers of Extraordinary Stories are Eliza Ratliff and Holly Wainwright.